In this video, we will be going over what is possibly the best lens for YouTube for Sony and Micro Four Thirds users. What's up everybody? I'm Jake McHugh and this channel is all about making better videos. I do gear reviews and test videos to help you determine what gear you need to make the videos you want to achieve. If that's something that may interest you, consider hitting that subscribe button down below. The lens I'm talking about in this video is the Sigma 16mm F1.4, and after some time of use, I have determined that this is the best lens for your Sony E-mount camera or Micro Four Thirds camera if you're currently creating content for online use. And the best thing about this lens is priced pretty fairly. You can find this lens brand new for anywhere around $375 to $400 US, and as always, I will have links down in the description below where you can find it. On the Sony E-mount camera system with the APS-C size sensor, you get around a full frame equivalent of 24mm with an aperture around f2.2 wide open. On a Micro Four Thirds camera, you get around a 32mm full frame equivalent while having an aperture of f2.8. For this video, you will see mostly images taken on a Sony camera, but do know I have tested this on my GH5 as well at one point, and I will be sharing my thoughts for both camera systems throughout the video. For the size, it really isn't that bad, with maybe just being a hair long in length for a prime lens, coming in at 92mm or 3.6 inches, but overall, it really doesn't bother me that much. If you are a Micro Four Thirds user, this lens will seem a little bit bigger to you as it is bigger than the 12 to 35 f2.8 zoom lens from Panasonic. The build quality is really solid and you can feel it in hand due to it weighing 405 grams or 14.3 ounces, and I believe this is because of the 16 elements inside the lens. The lens is weather sealed with a metal lens mount to go along with its already nicely built frame. It rocks a 67mm filter thread, and I usually use a step-up ring to get it to 77mm, that way I can use my Black Pro mist filter with it. It comes with a nice plastic lens hood for preventing lens flares when shooting photos, and to be honest, I don't really use this much at all, especially when shooting video. The only exterior control point on this lens is the smooth rubber focus ring, and this is a focus-by-wire lens, but more on this later. If you are using this lens on a Sony camera, you will have no issues using autofocus when shooting video or photos, and this is even when shooting wide open at f1.4. Autofocus with Sony in this lens is very fast and reliable, and I have no issues when using this for shooting talking heads here on YouTube, and I'm shooting at f1.4 because if you can, why not? On the other hand, for a Micro Four Thirds user, when I was using this on my GH5, it was not reliable whatsoever when shooting continual autofocus for video. This isn't on the lens, this is on the camera body like usual, and like I've mentioned in the past, you need to shoot at higher f-stops for the autofocus to be a little bit more reliable, and I'm thinking around like 3.2, 3.5. Once you get there, then I start trusting the autofocus a little bit more. I did not have any issues with using push button autofocus in manual mode, and when it came to photos, there was no issues at all in either mode. I did notice when shooting in 30 frames per second on the GH5 that this lens autofocused much better and quicker, but it did still have a little pulsing here and there. Regardless of what system you use, the autofocus is near silent in my opinion, and I have not heard it on an onboard mic as of yet. Do keep in mind that this lens does not have image stabilization, so if you're using a camera body without IBIS like my Sony a6400 here, you will have a harder time getting good handheld or vlogging footage. I now will show you some footage of what it would look like in a vlogging scenario. Alrighty, so we're in the backyard here and we are testing out the Sigma 16mm on my Sony a6400. And the reason we're testing this is due to the fact that the Sigma, it doesn't have lens stabilization and my Sony doesn't have IBIS either. So this is kind of just a quick test to let you know if you could vlog with a camera setup like this here. So is it too shaky? I'm gonna stand still real quick, kind of do a little pan here. Let me know down in the comments below what you guys think. But what I'm doing right now actually is I actually have my variable ND on as well, and I have it in aperture priority. I'm cheating a little bit, that way I can still shoot at f1.4 so you guys can see what kind of separation you get, because there's a great deal. But let me know down in the comments if you guys think this is too shaky without any IBIS or lens stabilization. The nice thing about this lens though in vlogging is that it's really, really fast autofocusing. I mean, the autofocusing is pretty darn great. I'm at f1.4. The camera and the lens doesn't struggle at all. Yeah, I mean, the focal length is more than wide enough in my opinion. I just don't know if it's too shaky or not. Now, let's say you had the a6600 or the a6500 with IBIS, you probably could get away with this lens then, but I just got the 6400. It's still a great camera. So I just kind of want to know what you guys think, if this is a good vlogging setup here, or is it too shaky for you guys to watch? Are you guys getting headaches from watching this? So I'm gonna shoot some quick B-roll handheld That way you can see what you can kind of get away with this setup as well. And then we'll jump back down into the studio. As you can see, it could be a little bit more of a challenge to get smoother footage when shooting handheld on a camera without IBIS paired with this lens. I did touch on this more in my Sony a6400 review, where I compared this lens up against the kit lens, which has lens stabilization, and then I put this lens on a gimbal as well, and I will have that linked up in the cards and down in the description below, and I highly recommend that you check that out. When this lens is paired with a camera like the G85 or the GH5 with IBIS, this becomes a non-issue when shooting handheld with this lens, but do note that the focal length is too tight in my opinion to use for vlogging with a Micro Four Thirds sensor. The image quality with this lens is incredible, even when shooting wide open at f1.4. It is very sharp in the middle, and in the corners there isn't much reduction in quality. Considering it's a wide-angle lens, this is a huge bonus that we are getting with this lens, I feel. Once you stop down to around f2.8, this is where I find you're going to get the sharpest image across the whole sensor at the widest aperture. To point out how sharp this lens is, I usually always use my 1/8 Black Pro mist filter just to take the edge off for video use. This lens does suffer from some lens distortion, but this is kind of expected with a wide-angle lens like this. A trick you can do with this lens when shooting video on a Panasonic or a Sony camera is to get 2 primes in one. On Sony's, we have clear image zoom, which allows us to zoom in 2 times without any loss of image quality or resolution. This gives us not only a full frame equivalent of a 24mm prime lens, but also around a 35mm prime lens if we punch in around 1.5 times. On the GH5, we have X teleconverter, which gives us around a 1.4 times crop without any image quality loss. This gives us our 32mm prime lens, as well as around a 50mm prime lens at 45mm. Now this isn't a huge thing, but this is something to know about when you need it in a pinch. If you watched my last video where I reviewed my teleprompter, I mentioned where I use clear image zoom all the time to avoid the vignette from my teleprompter. One of the coolest features of this lens is the close focus distance, which is 25 centimeters or just under 10 inches. This is awesome for some close-up wide-angle shots for photos or product B-roll. Another benefit to this lens is the ability to shoot in low light with having its fast aperture of f1.4. Sony's tend to be great in low light as is, but this is more crucial for my Micro Four Thirds users out there because of the smaller sensor. And with being able to shoot at f1.4, this helps out those cameras a lot. Also, with having this fast aperture at a wide angle makes it great for astrophotography as well. Now, the one big gripe I have with this lens is it being focused by wire. This makes it harder to pull focus manually or rack focus more consistently when shooting video compared to more traditional lenses. Along with this, even though it's great for astrophotography, it's not ideal due to the fact that you want to mark your focus ring once you have perfect focus achieved. Now let's cover what I would use this lens for on a Sony camera. With the 24mm full frame equivalent, this lens would be great for talking heads like this on YouTube, along with making it a darn near perfect gimbal lens in my opinion. For photos, the options are really endless, and it would be amazing for real estate photography, landscapes, architects, street photography, astrophotography, food photography, and environmental portraits as well. For Micro Four Thirds with its 32mm full frame equivalent, you could use it like this for YouTube if you want a more narrative look, along with environmental portraits, landscape, and general B-roll or product B-roll with its close focusing distance and faster aperture. Overall, I have loved using this lens on both camera systems that it is made for, but I like it a little bit more on the Sony due to its wider field of view, and I think this fills a bigger void in the lens choices for the Sony APS-C camera line. If you have a Sony camera, I feel this is a must-have in my opinion. With Micro Four Thirds, this isn't necessarily the case because you have a bunch of primes around that focal length as is, and they're a lot smaller usually. That doesn't mean I don't like this lens or recommend it for this camera system, but I do think you have more options to find exactly what fits your needs the best. So that's going to do it for this video here. I hope you guys enjoyed and got something out of it. If you like this video, make sure you hit the thumbs up button down below, subscribe if you haven't already, and make sure you hit the bell. That way you get notified when I drop future videos just like this one here. And last but not least, I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace.